Okay. Well, hey, you made it back. Valentine's Day was just the other day. And we've done a landscape and we've done a little bit of architecture and some perspective. And we did like a little figure. We painted a human figure and put that in a landscape. Um, because Valentine's Day was just here, let's go ahead and paint some flowers. So, you have been here before, and the one thing you have gotten to see that I like to do right off the bat is I like to load a brush and some turpentine, and I like to just dive into it. So we're gonna go into this. I think this is cadmium red. We're gonna do the entire surface. And put a little bit of, this would be cadmium orange. And then I have vermilion. So we're going to do vermilion, cadmium, and more cadmiums. Cover the entire surface. All right, the entire surface is now covered. We have a little bit of light. It works its way to very vibrant. Take that same brush that we just loaded all that up, and I'm actually going to put a little bit of white, titanium white. Okay. Now, whenever I think of roses, Valentine's Day roses, roses are done with a series of diamonds, and it's a diamond that becomes a whole bunch of interacting diamonds. And those are just going to be the inside petals that become the outside petals. Outside petals become inside petals. Now, one of the things that I had remembered reading or hearing was that Bob Ross, all of our heroes, that guy, he would sit and do a painting and then get in touch with his producer and tell them that this is going to be the landscape that we're going to paint today. And he had formulated out a quick little process to be able to say, hey, this is going to take us 30 minutes. Well, the last 2 times I sat down with us in order to be able to show us what we were going to do for the week, I did do that. I sat down, took a canvas, I took a time clock, and started to take a time of how long is it going to take me to be able to show you folks something. And today, I was so busy over my weekend, I never really got a chance to sit down for us. So, this is actually the preliminary. We're just going to dive right on in. And I just want to be able to show everybody here that this is just how easy this really can be if we decide to sit down and do this. Now, I'm starting to build the vase that these are going to go in. And if you just saw, all I wound up doing was just a handful of quick little diamonds on top of each other right off the bat. And these aren't very long stem roses, because this is a short little vase. But maybe you didn't go and buy these from a store. You saw these, thought of the person that you loved, or you thought of the space that you wanted to make was prettier, smell prettier, so you brought these flowers into your house. Now, what we've done here is we've just taken titanium white over top of all that wet paint. I just simply wound up doing a series of brush strokes in front of each other and got what I'm seeing as volume of where these flowers are. Now, all the flowers aren't going to live perfectly in that vase, so I'm going to switch out from that big 1-inch brush. Now that I got my surface covered, I'm going to go over to this little liner brush, just a little fella. Now, the green that is on a plant against all of this orange is now going to start showing up very dark. And all of that just becomes these little stems. I also want to create an idea of where the light is. So let's go ahead and have the light kind of come from this right side, which now means I need to see a bit of a shadow on this side. And I want to see a little bit more of a shadow on this side. And I'm using that same green that I want to use, that I used already up here. And that's because now everything will have that same kind of tonal balance, where we can build volume on this flat surface. This is going to have to sit on something. Do we want it sitting on maybe some cloth and have a bit of a background here? So let's go back to this same big wide brush. Actually here, I'm going to switch it over. I'm just going to go over to the same size brush. I'm going to dip it back into that same green that I used here. And I just want to create a little bit of a volume down through here to now give that a place to actually sit. Typically a still life, we actually want to have the objects in front of us in order to be able to not guess. But we're going to make this stylized, and the imagination is going to make that happen. I want to go back into this real bright red that I started off with, so the cadmium red. I'm going to pick it up and go into that titanium white. And now I actually want to go in and start doing some individual petals here on this. Okay, so the shadow is going to be on this side. So we want to keep all this darker line work on this side. I dip back in there. And we're going to do this because the shadow is going to create that. Shadow is going to be over here. Shadow is going to be over here. Now, the whole time I'm doing this, I am trying to imagine a rose. A rose I keep seeing in my brain as a series of diamonds covered in a rectangle that scallop over a little bit, that bottom down. The scalloping that I'm seeing in my brain is from these outside petals. So the best way to do that is, let's do a little bow down. We're going to do one more, and it's going to taper up almost like a comma. Bring that down. This petal now needs to be here. That now gets overlapped by that petal. The stalk of it's going to be a little bit more over there. Now, inside of this, we're going to do this to this and this to that. I'm just making round shapes, and I'm trying to keep the idea of the diamond or a bunch of V's interacting with each other, because those are going to be all of those what we would see as layers of the rose, the petals that actually make it up. And so I had started this all off with that Bob Ross guy having sat down and to do a painting in an allotted amount of time. The way I'm going to base my time, because I would like everybody to be able to spend as much time that they would like on this, or as little time on this. I'm going to base my time on that. What I mean by this is I'll be able to get about 20 minutes per session, I figure. And so this is going to become my time gauge. Today I have rainbow belts. I absolutely love rainbow belts by Happy Highs. They're a grower down in Pueblo. They use a really great nutrients line. Green Earth is the nutrients line. There's a guy named Alex Fernandez who had a really great operation called the Cuban Crew. And that was the same nutrients line that he used. He's a really talented grower. And whenever you have this type of thing here, you can have whatever type of green thumb you want. The nutrients that I'm using are oil paint and really, really cheap brushes. I used to, when I was younger, really like to buy a nice $40 brush. Not all brushes are created the same. I will say that. You will be able to tell the difference on a $40 brush versus 14 brushes for less than $40. What you're really looking for in a good brush is when it bounces back on you, it interacts and springs at the same time that you release or press down. That's what I look for. Okay, now that we're starting to bring in a little bit of this, a little bit of that, the brain's starting to see this, the brain's starting to see that. And I know that we're doing all this red on red here. A little bit of monochrome. I am going to want to start making those into a style called Cubism. For me, this Cubism is a really neat way of showing the viewer all aspects of what the object is. So if you get to see it from the front side, the idea of Cubism was to be able to see it from the entire cube, all at one viewing point. Little roses also have little tiny guys that kind of hold the flower in shape. They'll go up a little bit. And so I'm going to paint an impressionist style that will then become a cubist style. And I just dirtied up a brush to get that all kind of just gross. So all of that brown and all of that kind of becomes bluish gray. Bring that under here a little bit more. And bring this out a little bit more. Okay, so I really want to start messing around with this background. And with that background, let's bring in the idea of what Cubism for me is. And for me, Cubism was more about the exploration. Pardon me. Okay. So, I would like to be able to start doing these ideas of what I think Cubism is. And that was looking more through a kaleidoscope at something. I don't like that brush. And a lot of this is revisiting old friends. Some of these brushes really, really are old friends. And you remember like, oh yeah, hey, I can do that with this one. Okay, so I just wanted something a little bit stiffer. That's gonna give me a little bit more wide on a length of that stroke. Okay, so I want to start bringing in an idea of diamonds all over the place, to look like a kaleidoscope. But I want to work with these lines that we've already made, that are gonna now start giving themselves a little bit more energy, that want to lead off. And one of the things about the kaleidoscope is that it kind of vibrates a bit. I don't know if any of us out there have had the opportunity to have something that visually does that to us. But whenever I was a little boy, well, maybe not a little boy, but whenever I was younger, I overheard this guy in a Pizza Hut once say that he took this piece of paper that made him watch a table get up and walk across the room. And I looked at my big brother and said, is there stuff that really does that? Well, it did make tables get up and walk across the room, but it put a really neat vibrating kaleidoscope into things. Now, this is more of a, if you know, you know. But that little world can have some really neat energy that goes on with it. And then you can sit back and try to remember a false memory and maybe try to recreate the idea of it here. This is a alizarin crimson. This is a deeper red. All I'm doing is pulling my paintbrush to the left and making just a small little dash. I want to parallel some of those shapes that are in here. And to create the hallucinogenic place of a cubist still life. Take that big strong red again, bring that back in here, and all I'm doing is just pulling it all the way. I want to try to create a resonant harmony, a resonating harmony. And so for me now, this really comes down to I want to just start filling in to create more volume, even though we know that this is all fake. Let's still try to now create a space that's believable, where if a still life decides to start vibrating, that at least when we look at it, the brain says, oh yeah, I can see that real fast. There's a painter named Paul Cezanne, and Paul Cezanne is credited for doing or being the father of modern art. All Paul Cezanne wound up doing was he painted some still lifes with fish and some apples, and he shifts the perspective of the table that we're seeing here, and I'll give a quick little example. He takes where we want to see the table, and he tells the viewer that this is the table's edge. And then he takes another line and then raises the table's edge to here, and then throws the perspective of the table like this that way, even though we've already started to brain read it this way. And as a result, when the little Parisians showed up to the galleries to see these paintings, it is reported that they attacked them with their umbrellas. They didn't know how to read it. They didn't know what to see. They didn't know that they were seeing an apple or an orange with a table, because their whole existence, every painter was showing us the attempt at the reality that we were seeing around us, because we didn't have cameras, or if we did have a camera, created in 1837, given to the public around 1840, and the patent was sold to the public by Alexander Graham Bell, so it wasn't just a present to the world. We had to pay for it. To be able to read something now, with all of the bombardment of images that we've been given from Andy Warhol's soup cans, and I just dipped this into the red and to that white combo that I've been doing, just to give a little bit more, because of all the images that we've been bombarded with. Sometimes, if we come across something new, it takes our little caveman brain a minute longer. And just as much as the goal of the person that owns a business where you go in and shop, they want you to stay in that store longer, because the longer you stay in there, the more you're going to wind up walking away with. So maybe, just maybe, the goal for us is to dip it into blue. All right? The goal for us is maybe we get somebody to just spend a little bit longer at the easel, or maybe we get to spend a little bit longer looking at somebody else's painting, and hopefully we can walk away with something that we didn't have before. And be surprised like a dog barking, and be as excited about that on alarm. Now, maybe, just maybe, we start bringing that blue and start showing where those centers of those are. Because now that we already have a distorted reality, we accentuate it a little bit more. Decorative art is fun. Not everything needs to be so serious. And maybe, just maybe, we can have a fun, light-hearted piece that now becomes a little bit more of a decorative thing. And all I'm doing here is I'm taking that muddy brush and I'm creating these back and forth diamonds. Where are those diamonds? Why are they there? Well, oh, that's a big S curve. Because of the 90-degree angles, the corners, the cubes break everything down into a cube. Supposedly, the painter George Braque and Pablo Picasso sat on a train and said, "Show me what you're seeing." And supposedly, that is the story of Cubism. Two painters that took a trip wanted to show each other in a different way how they view things. That viewpoint winds up working its way over to Paul Cézanne. And Paul Cézanne then is credited for being the father of modern art. Cézanne winds up taking that whole thing in such a different place and became obsessed with painting this mountain. He painted the same men playing cards over and over again. And he painted a sequence of these bathers over and over again. There are some things that we've been given. There are some things that we've stumbled upon. The subject matter for the painter Frida Kahlo painted the same thing over and over and over again. She didn't question what she painted. So maybe these are some of the tricks that I can show you that make it all possible. I feel like I've spent 25, 30 minutes here. Heck, I feel like that was like 22 minutes spent. I don't feel like I've spent a whole lot of time on this. But just as fast as that, we can have ourselves some flowers that we can take home and give to our loved ones. And so we can love ourselves. And we don't have any worry about knowing that we can just sit down and within 20 minutes, hey, watch this. We're going to take some bright, look at this. Just put it right on top of that. if one thing I keep talking about with this painting trick, if you paint it thin enough, we'll be able to build that all up on top of each other. And you can still keep these sharp blues. A good little vase is gonna add some decoration. A little swirl. Bring that to that. Now, we can make things a little bit weirder, a little bit more weird. Start bringing in a strange perspective of this, because now we're going to look down on it. So we want to maybe that. A little bit more right there. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to take the back of this. That's done. That's a wrap. There's nothing more. I mean, we can just keep making this. And you want to make gradations. The gradations are just going to be lights. Start throwing your lighter lights. You can build on top of this, put more squares inside of this square. All day long, gang. All day long. And the more, and the more, and the more, and the more, and the more. Here, watch this real quick. Make some wood grain. Back of the brush. Do that. Do that. Wood grain. Okay? One thing about wood grain is that it needs to repeat itself. Almost like a piece of fish, right? And the way fish meat is. And let's make that angle to that. Okay? Scratch it in there. Boom. Hey, I can't thank you enough. It's been a really great time. I hope we picked up a couple little tricks. Love yourself. The heartiest Yojo to y'all. And we'll see you around the block.